everyone. Welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you all doing? As always, when I go to think about what to say in these intros, even for this brief 10 seconds before I get to the bio of the guest, it's always a swirling cauldron of negative emotions, let's say. I assume you are somewhat in the same emotional ballpark that I'm in. Interesting times. But great episode today. This is Wendy Eisenberg, and if you don't know who Wendy is, let me read you her bio right now. Musician Wendy Eisenberg is an improviser and songwriter who uses guitar, pedals, the tenor banjo, the computer, the synthesizer, and the voice. Though often working solo as both a songwriter and improviser, with acclaimed releases on Tzadik, VDSQ, Out of Your Head, and Garden Portal, they also perform in the rock band Editrix, and in endless other combinations. Towards the end of 2020, Bada Bing released their album Auto, and their latest, Bent Ring, was just released at the end of last year on Dear Life Records. Both are great. I guess I heard Auto when it first came out, or close to when it first came out, and it's been on my phone ever since. And I gotta tell you, every few months, between deleting and adding new albums, I really ship a Theseus my phone. It's a whole new playlist, but Auto's been on there. And so has Bent Ring since towards the end of last year. Wendy really hits a sweet spot for me between pop sensibilities and avant-garde aesthetics, let's say. And I knew they and I were going to get along when I went to Wendy's website and saw that they had a William Gaddis quote. And I am knee-deep in the middle of JR at the moment. I think we mentioned it we're talking in this episode. Still knee-deep, even though we recorded this towards the end of last year, because I'm depressed as fuck when it comes to working. And I'm having trouble, I don't know about you, but I'm having trouble reading and writing, getting the energy up to do either. We talk about that a little bit in this episode, towards the beginning. I don't think we come to any good conclusions about what to do or how to feel, but it was good to talk about and articulate these kinds of things. And Wendy's great. Wendy's absolutely great. Their music's awesome, and they're a cool person. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, and you want to check out other episodes, what I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like. If you like this talk with Wendy, maybe you'll like other talks with musicians such as Mary Timony, Sadie Dupuis from Speed Your Teeth and Sad 13, Alan Kepner of Pale Hound, Night Jewel. Those are all the last couple years or so. If you like those and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 12 years. Talked to hundreds upon hundreds of musicians and writers and performers and actors and comedians and artists. Oh, right. And also, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Twitter for very stupid jokes, and Instagram for pictures of Naomi and the animals. And that's how it probably will always be from now on. Oh, and stay tuned. Got a lot of great episodes coming up, including the 12th anniversary of the show. Yes, 12 years of Beginnings. Celebrate with John Linnell from They Might Be Giants. It was an absolutely lovely talk. And I know you're going to enjoy it. But for now, let's talk to Wendy. So wait, you said you were in a weird mood. And I'm kind of curious. I mean, we are recording this. I don't know if this is it. We are recording this the day that Kyle Rittenhouse was granted freedom by the great state of Wisconsin. So that's maybe where my brain is. But what's your weird brain state or weird vibe or weird mode of being that you're in?
Oh, I think it's So usually I feel like my life is characterized by like a comical amount of activity. Like I'm always doing stuff and like running around doing stuff. And I did that a lot for the past life. But then this week I have had like a relatively chill amount of things on my plate. And it makes me feel like ordinarily I'd be really looking forward to this. Like, oh, I can finally like get in touch with whatever it is that makes poetry possible or like whatever. But instead I just have been like moping kind of ambiguously and like with this kind of lack of curiosity about, because I'm not like sad in a way that's like deeply sad. I'm just sad in a way that's like an abstract way to pass the time. And I think it's because of this like this news partially to the point of like, I don't know. I was trying to find like a really good metaphor earlier in my day. And then I've ended up on the Wikipedia page that was like a category list of metaphors based on objects. And it's really weird. One of the things that I clicked on from there was Occam's razor, because there's a whole subcategory of philosophical razors. And I found this other great razor, which was Hanlon's razor, which is, quote, never attribute to malice that which could be adequately explained by stupidity. And moments after finding about that razor, I clicked on the school to prison pipeline metaphor based on an object. And I feel like all of these are kind of like detailing the sort of like malaise that happens when you're like in any way attuned to the public temperature and like also trying to like figure out how to live in times when you actually have idle time, which is like an incredibly bourgeois problem.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, I mean, that's been a theme on this show since the beginning. Both those things, like what happens when you have empathy and are attuned to the breakdown of society in late capitalism, right? That's one thing. And the other thing is what happens when your dreams are formed in one paradigm. Like my dreams were formed in the paradigm of the 80s and 90s when I mean, society was still breaking down, but it was hidden from view, right?
Yeah.
Unless you were like an academic or were really like, you know, an autodidact, really studied in theory. Maybe you could kind of figure things out. But what happens when your dreams are formed then? And then we go through this shift. And some people will put, well, I've talked to on the show, put the shift at like 9/11. I put it at 2008. But like the paradigm changes and like it no longer feels like you get this bourgeois anxiety, right? Where it's like, well, I still have the dreams to create things and specifically do that for a living. But the moral imperative has changed. And now there is this, if you are a feeling person, there's a moral imperative to do something about the times. And what do you do when what do you do? How do you even comport yourself in this time with those contradictory kinds of things? I don't know. I mean, that's again, I'm not putting it forth any kind of actual moral lesson from this. I'm not saying like you should do X, Y, or Z. This is not Aristotle, but like, you know, it is a conundrum. If you like, for a lot of people on the show, it is a conundrum, and it seems like it is a conundrum for you.
Yeah, I mean, it is too, because I love reading everything that I can find, and the fiction that I've found is coming out and being talked about a lot deals with these concerns in a way where the bourgeois feels emphasized mostly, and I think that that's rhetorically in place because people want to like bring in an imaginary implicated bourgeois towards changing stuff for real. So like, and there's really beautiful examples of books like this. Like, I don't think this is actually a book like this, but I just finished reading Erpenbeck's Go Went Gone. And like, that is a really great book. It's like important and subtle and light and human, and like it kind of does it. But there's also this kind of like genre of book about like largely like adjunct professors or people who would be friends with adjunct professors that are all like really bummed out abstractly about the climate crisis, and instead of being bummed out about it in a way that would create a novel that might be overly didactic and annoying to read, they just like use voice in these hilarious ways that I like do respond to in order to like signal that they're sympathetic to this, but ultimately not do anything about it, which bothers me on the one hand, because I'm like, shouldn't we be reading things that are less like, this is the vantage point of someone who's not being hurt, and this is the vantage point of someone whose story isn't resigned just to that they could be in particular like lines of cultural warfare. But another thing that's interesting to me is like, what do we do with the fact that a lot of the change should be kind of coming from the top down, and it's like these adjuncts really probably can't fix anything, like, right. But they could, if, because like I do believe that like mass unification and like everything can lead towards some level of revolution if it's possible. But it's like, I don't know, it gets me confused with like various neoliberal imperatives, and then I'm like, whatever. But honestly, my weird mood is just because I haven't like seen anyone in person all day. Like I've just been looking at the computer. It's like way more basic than all this. Like it's just like, oh, I'm lonely, kind of.
I like when we intellectualize. Well, I mean, at least we're on the same wavelength, which I find to be useful sometimes for this show, where I don't have to like explain myself. But like, but yeah, it's just a mundane kind of just like, yeah, I'm feeling lonely, and that, because that does color the way that you interact with the world then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. It kind of is this weird mood, but if I can re-intellectualize it a little bit.
Yes.
Just because because I'm just wondering about some of these people you're reading, like, because this is the thing. There's a number of ways you can go. We are powerless to stop what is happening, right? It should be coming from the top down, but like things have broken down to the point where the will of the people, whatever that is, right? Let's just go with whatever the polling says is the will of the people, right? Mm-hmm. Let's pretend that there's like a
unified people.
Yeah, let's just pretend for the moment. But whatever that is,
will.
I mean, I went canvassing for a city council candidate before the pandemic, and talking to just regular people. When you're knocking on doors, you realize just how like no one has any kind of like, not no one, but like most people don't have a kind of like coherent political ideology or even a coherent belief system about the world. And it's just kind of like a hodgepodge of stuff. So again, let's abstract for a second. But like whatever that will of the people is definitely different from like what the people in power are doing, right? And that's what I find difficult about this period of time we're living in, where like we know all the stuff. Like intellectually, we can understand how the things work, and the fact that like, yes, there should be like, this is the point of time where like an FDR type president should be doing something big, and instead we have a like James Buchanan type president who's like sleepwalking us into some kind of like apocalyptic scenario.
Was James Buchanan an abolitionist?
I don't believe he was.
Why do I think of that? I think I'm thinking about a song by the Mighty Giants.
Maybe. I mean, he could have been. All I know is that he didn't do much about. If I'm thinking of the right,
do anything.
If I'm thinking of the right president. Yeah, he was the one before Lincoln, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He basically just allowed the contradictions to kind of keep contradicting until they led to the Civil War. It
was Van Buren. That's what I was thinking about.
Yes.
Anyway,
there's a John Linnell. I think they're in the John Linnell. Or no, is it in the James K. Polk song on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
That was weird. It was like a really dusty. It's kind of like when you said comport about like 5 minutes ago. You said comport yourself, and I was thinking about James Chance. Like for like a brief, incredible moment of just instead of contort yourself.
Yeah. So our brains. Okay, I want to go back to this in a second, but I'm curious. You're like in this moment, you can either go nihilistic, right, and you can say nothing matters and just like live immoral or hedonistic lifestyle if you really feel like it, or you can go in a kind of like, well, I'm gonna like take care of the local things I can take care of and make things better for the people in the vicinity of what I can kind of control, as opposed to these larger things. And I'm wondering if you have thought about that, or like what direction you kind of live your life in.
I think about that a lot, but one of the like really strange, I want to say vicissitudes, but I don't exactly know what that word means. Just rhythmically, it would be nice to use here. Just being totally honest about it all.
I think changes, like, right? The little change, the vicissitudes or the little changes of things.
Yeah, I think in the vicissitudes of my life. Let's just go with it. Thank you. Using this sweet descriptive definition potentially, though you're probably right. I mean, I think that like I think my loneliness is sort of weird because it's like I can make myself busy enough that I feel like I'm making a difference, but actually I'm just living my life. Mm-hmm. And there's also the issue. Do you know what I mean? I feel like saying that is like more withering than I maybe meant, but it's like how I feel, where I'm like, oh, like doing a lot of rehearsals is not really a radical act. Like it could be if you're rehearsing something that isn't just neurotic shit. Or no, actually that could be really deep too. But also, I mean, I think like my orientation in this direction is to like work with people who are really good at activism and like like my friend Philip Golub, who the Music Workers Alliance, like working with them a little bit, though I haven't been like as present in it because of busyness. It's like busyness, like the busyness that we as artists or like people who just have non-normative careers, as if those exist for anyone anymore. Like, you know, our busyness can become an excuse that then like people who are like genuinely radical can say, like shields us from like taking serious action.
Yep.
But it's also like we have this artistic imperative that I do think changes the world. Like I think that there's like a direct link between how much I would geek out on stuff like Nicholson Baker and like ultra descriptive work towards like a noticing of my everyday surroundings that became, and again, radical is so like precious and overused of a word in some circles right now, but it's like by being able to be seduced to look at the world with such specificity and precision, I feel like my leanings were like shifted left like way faster and way more holistically than like they could have been if I were just like left to be in blanket statement territory. Mm-hmm. But then again, it's like, is that making a real difference on the world? Like, I don't know.
Well, this is that bourgeois anxiety I was kind of referring to, where it is like, home. Look, I think it's irreducible. I mean, this is my own opinion. The world does need art. Like with your people's lives without art, whether it's the art we make or I don't know, fucking Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movie. I'm not gonna try. Even though I was like, I woke up. The cats woke me up. I fell asleep on the couch, and the cats woke me up last night at like 4 a.m, and so I turned on the TV to try to get back to sleep, and I saw that was on like. I forget what, HBO Max or something. It was streaming somewhere, and I'm just like, sure. I remember the Turtles from when I was a kid. It is genuinely like, it's bad on every level, but I'm not gonna like for the general public. I'm not gonna editorialize about what is meaningful art or not, just for the sake of this.
Just I'm thinking about how many different modes of like interaction there are between you waking up and you getting back to sleep again. Like there's the you who hit the couch pillow, there's the cat that woke you up, there's the you that looks at like the fruit of like a ton of insane labor by everyone from directors to productions assistants to actors to whatever. Like whoa, like there's like a whole like cornucopia of activity there. And all in the service of getting you back to bed. I mean, that's just like so advanced.
And I mean, you want to add in, my wife fell asleep on my side of the bed, and I really don't like sleeping on the other side of the bed. So that's why I like stuck it out on the couch for that part. Wow. So it's I know, for just this one. I mean, if you want to Nicholson Baker mezzanine it, right, and pick apart the moment, then you'll find all that stuff adding into the and of course, when you wake up late at night, not you, me. When I wake up late at night, fear of death is the first thing that sneaks in. So you got a whole mortality thing going on, and then you start watching the Ninja Turtles, the second Michael Bay's second one, and you're like, I don't have enough time on Earth to even do this at 4 a.m. But to get back to the bourgeois anxiety, art is necessary in people's lives because life sucks without having music and entertainment, and it's. Yeah, you don't need it to survive. But I don't think our society has collapsed to the point where we're just like, beating up people for a log full of grubs, yet. In at least America, all right? I can't, I can only speak for my own experience. So our lives are really thin without, and I would say there's not a lot of meaning in it without art. However, it is not necessary, and there might be more morally or ethically important things to do. And so that's that tension that I think is irreducible for at least you and me. I'm sure for a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of people like not making art. I'm sure that have an ethical backbone. There is tension between like going to my job in an office or going to my job at Pathmark or whatever, and knowing that like I should really be throwing a Molotov cocktail through some billionaire's mansion.
Yeah. I mean, I want to take it like here, like about 50 degrees in another direction.
Please do.
Or maybe even just inward. Like for me, I mean, the exact imperative that made you want to watch TV so that you could go to sleep, which is, I believe, two of the most accessible detours you can take away from like what a total stoner would call consensus reality. Like, it's the same thing when you make art, and it's the same thing when you share art in the moment with people. So like phase one of the usefulness of art, beyond just like that it makes life slightly different, is that any absorption into such a phenomenon like takes you away from whatever thing might be just like stepping on your neck, and like it orients you towards like this weird cosmic disappearance where like then you end up in the moment of that art. Like that's why I love improvised music so much, and improvising music, and going to shows of improvised music, and going to art shows where there's performance, is because like when you're in someone else's perception of time, the normal things that cause that bourgeois anxiety, which is mostly a separation from community, in addition to a kind of economic anxiety, at least for me a lot of the time, like when I'm in this other time that like an artist can give me, it feels the same as when I'm in my songwriting time and I'm just like not there because like there's bigger issues at play, which is how am I going to write this bridge? Like I feel like the problem solving impulse, the receptive impulse, like the understanding of art has to do with like a really huge voiding of like your sense of identity and presence in like this world. And like that gives you an escape that then when you get back to like the world, which is still the world that art is made in, then when you're back, you have a totally different perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that the usefulness, like, yeah, like I don't think that all these problems can be solved just because of like one billionaire changing their mind or just because of masses revolting. I think we have to step back from the canvas a little bit. And that's like where I think art, that's another, I think a little bit like underreported place where art comes in as like a perspective giver, is the sense of removal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even assigning like a singular kind of reason. I mean, people like I watched that Ninja Turtles thing to fall back to sleep. I also watch art to make me feel emotions that I've never felt before, that like I've wanted to, or add meaning to my life, or some connection to something I'm not religious. And so I mean, one of the problems with this like kind of like living in the corpse of the Enlightenment is that we're like very, in general, disconnected from something bigger than us, whether that's an actual divine or just like a feeling of something larger. And I feel like art can do that. I mean, there's plenty of things it can do. It can, can be something to have on while you're playing Candy Crush. Like, it's not like there's no singular thing. But I do think that, like, in particular, like, making it, if you are conscious of what the world is like and how it's kind of, going through what I've been calling the slow dystopia, then, like, it does create a particular anxiety in you. And it may not be present all the time. It may not be even something that is that affects you in your day-to-day life, but I don't know. I think it's my guess is it's there for most people who have that kind of awareness. I'm guessing you do, because I do want to kind of go back a little bit, because it seems like you and I are cut kind of from the same cloth in some way. And I'm kind of curious about if you grew up in a very intellectual household, you know, did you grow up in touch with your feelings? Are you in touch with your feelings now? I know that's a lot of questions to throw at you, but, you know, feel free to start. I'm really interested in the kind of like, in people who have both intellectual and emotional sides, who have like either grown up with that integrated, who like myself have had to integrate it later in life thanks to therapy and things like that. But
I have therapy after this. This is going to be an insane day. I'll like start the day lonely and end the day just, I don't even know, psychotic.
But like, I don't know if you can maybe go into a little bit about your upbringing. I'm curious.
Yeah. So I think both my parents are really smart, and my sister's also incredibly smart. But I wouldn't say that the kind of discussion that we're having, which is like a different form of intellectual activity, is the kind of smart that they're interested in. My dad is a lawyer, and he's like incredible at it and extremely niche, and is an incredibly creative storyteller. So when I was growing up, he would say these like really just unbelievable little yarns about like the neighboring town and how the neighboring town had a witch, like these folk tales that were like clearly amusing him as much as me. And I do have like very sweet, like sun-dappled memories of him giving these stories to me in our house. And my mom is like brilliant and she's very artistic and like does graphic design and photography and is a great drawer. She just like always had like an eye. And what's cool about my mom's taste is that it's very bright. Like she's never into this kind of like minimal, you know, like the modern McDonald's look of like, you know, anhedonic gray. She really hates, I don't know if she hates that, but I feel like she hates that because like even when she has gray stuff in her house, when she designs things, it's like, it's just different, and it's always to foreground like a really strange piece of art that she collected or something. And it's not like in a let's collect art, we have $1 zillion the way. It's like let's collect art like I went to the fair and this looks dope kind of way. And so like they both were like they both are like smart and sensitive and like aesthetically oriented, but they were never so interested in this egghead shit that I like. Like they you know what I mean? Like because it's pretty intense the way that I do it, and like they would kind of pick on me a little bit and be like, there's a time and a place for everything, like you have to like, because I mean it's like you look at like early critiques of somebody like Joanna Newsom or whatever, and it's like, why does she use words like catenary or whatever? And it's like, because that's the only word that fits. But like when you're 13 and saying that and you're not like a harp genius, it's like different, you know. So I had to will myself into whatever cheaper version of a harp genius I could become.
Banjo,
the cheapest harp. But, yeah.
But so okay, that's interesting. You think the harp? You think that being a harp virtuoso gives her a little bit of legitimacy or a little bit of space to then be, or like maybe the harp, just the connection to kind of like upper crusty types, that it like gives her space to be a little more florid in her language. I'm kind of resenting. I'm regretting having made that that link, because I really just think that nobody needs legitimacy like that. I mean, I think she has it in part probably because of the harp, but like she's just such a visionary, it probably would have already been there. Yeah, but okay, let me throw this at you, because I think about this a lot, like artists that get popular but are weird. I'm always like confused a lot of times. Like when I was a kid, like, you know, I think one of the things that kind of set me off on a different trajectory was Nirvana. And like, I'm still kind of like baffled by the fact that they became as popular as they did, considering the lyrics are nonsense. And I don't see a lot of other artists since then. I mean, things have changed obviously a lot, but like, I don't know, a lot of like artists that are like that big that use nonsense, like are lyrically nonsensical, that aren't just like, you know, talking about like a, you know, loved one, a hookup or whatever. I don't know, whatever Adele is singing about on the new album or something.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I too am turning 30 in a month, so I probably should start relating to it. But yeah, I'm kind of captivated by the weird popular too. I don't know how it happens. I I can't really argue on this, but something in my feelings wants me to argue and say that what they were singing really wasn't nonsense. But that's just because I kind of do subscribe a little too faithfully to the fact that, like, we do try to find patterns and, like, try to make them mean things. But also I think that Kurt had a plan when he wrote in his way.
Yeah,
whatever.
Also,
I mean,
he could have just been
yeah.
like nodding off on heroin and wrote down some stuff. I'm not 100%. I don't know the facts.
I believe in his lyricism very heavily, and I don't know why. So for me, I'm coming from a gut thing, and being the type of person I am, I desperately want to back it up with facts, but I just can't.
Can we agree? Can we agree at the very least that it was abstract in a way that most lyrics that are, top 10 Billboard charting hits were not abstract or are not abstract even, like what's the biggest before that? The Beatles? Like it comes
the abstract lyrics?
Yeah, it comes around like for a band that was that big. It comes around like it seems like every like 40, 50 years maybe you get a giant a paradigm defining band that is weird in some way. And I'm just curious a lot of times, and because I'm not a historian and I don't look at the like dialectics of whatever the fuck was going on at the time. So I'm just left confused. But like what allowed them to kind of sneak through into like the mainstream consciousness when like in the 80s and 90s what I call like beer commercial ideology. Like that's what was going on. Like people wanted to like drink a Coors Light, play beach volleyball with some twins, and like that was what was going on.
Breathtaking.
Yes, that was what you were born into.
Yeah, I'm reading. Someone I grew up with is this brilliant comedian, writer person. I don't really know if she's a comedian, but she makes me laugh. Called Rax King, and like I'm reading her book now. I'm kind of reading it in a funny way because I'm just like, am I going to recognize stuff from like the before 10 ages when we knew each other better? But I'm reading it. It's like sort of a glorification of that like beer and twins thing.
Yeah,
and I really do like it. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about mainstream things, and I'm thinking about the bedtime stories era of Madonna, where she's, like, referencing Leonora Carrington and stuff. And she has all these videos that are about the female surrealists and whatever, like... And it's very abstract, but it's, like, not very abstract, because it's, like you want to talk about sex or something. And then, like, I feel like Prince is so direct that it feels abstract to me. But I feel like right now what I'm doing is like I'm scanning the annals of pop history towards an abstraction that I want to find in it, but that may have been a little bit different. But I'm not saying that from a sinister or like calculated point. I just like want to look so closely at things that they become weird because they've been given the kind of attention to become who they are. And like I feel like when I look at Nirvana, like they do the work of that for you with their abstraction.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that impulse, but there's also the reality of like how the artist is taken in pop culture. And and what I appreciate where you're coming from, I don't think that's how most people would take Prince or Metallica. I don't know. I really am stretching for the name of
Metallica is absurd though. They're like a whole other exercise.
Well, yeah. But okay, so your dad's a lawyer. Is he? Now you grew up outside of D.C., right?
Yes.
Is he a lawyer for the government?
No, but my sister works for the IRS. Which is true. He probably like ran in government-y circles, but he's like a pensions tax lawyer.
Okay.
Like my whole family, I feel like, is tax lawyers, even though it's just my sister and my dad. It's a looming presence of tax law. It's probably why JR is something that I like, but don't like as much as the recognitions.
I see. I mean, what was the name of the place? Gaithersburg? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Gaithersburg. Woo!
What was it like growing up there? I mean, is it a small town? Is it...
yeah.
Do you know everyone?
No. I mean, I think my family and we were like small community people. And so we're like, I don't know. Even if we could have hypothetically known a lot of people, we probably just wouldn't have. It's like we're more minor or something, which I like. But it was definitely a suburb, and it started out rural Like, I grew up in front of a farm, and then, like, slowly, as the 90s became the 2000s, became the 2010s, like, it became, like, less farmy and more, like, planned development looking places. And so watching that was kind of influential because I don't know, I remember walking, I lived in, like, a sort of a neighborhood that was, like, kind of on the outskirts of Gaithersburg and Rockville, I think. North Potomac, I don't know. It was bordering richer places than where we were. And so my, like, neighborhood was, like, cactus shaped. Like, it was, like, a weird thin, like, there's, like, 3 cul-de-sacs and, like, a long alley, but it wasn't very big. So we knew our neighbors, but we didn't, like, know. And then across from there was, like, one of those big, densely knitted, like, not exactly Levitt towns, but, like, definitely zoned places. And in that zoned place there was, like, a lake, and I would go there and I would, like, have all these, like, transcendent experiences looking at this man-made lake, not realizing the, like, total David Foster Wallace-ness of that experience, but just being, like, moved in, like, the most, like, transcendental classic Massachusetts ways possible by this, like, totally fake presence near a totally real former farm that used to, like, apparently house, like, soldiers, like, POW camp stuff. Like, that was, like, the farm behind my house, like, was, like, a weird resting ground for them, apparently, at some point in history. My mom loves history and looked into that, and I don't know that much about it.
Like Civil War era?
Yeah, Civil War era, and I think World War II. It was, like, a place where, like, people would just be in pain and have been on the wrong side of stuff, or whatever that means. And so they would be behind my house. I would be in this man-made lake, like, just thinking about how beautiful this lake was as if it was real, like, which it was to me. And, like, so I could say that if I were ever to just be succinct in my life, I would just say that it was, like, a weird, very believed in simulacrum and, like, a lot of...
Okay, but I mean, what I want to wind my way back to, but I guess I'll just ask it now, is, like, were you intellectualizing these things at the time? Like, I guess what I'm trying to suss out is... like, it seemed like you were saying, like, you were, like, the sublime nature of this lake or something, like, affected you on an emotional level, right? Are you feeling that deeply? Are you repressing that? Are you
repressing what part?
The feeling, right? Are you feeling that fully? Like, because you, at least the way we're talking now, right? Everything's very intellectualized. Everything's at this heady level. And so I'm curious about how the emotional aspect or part of it actually, like, how you actually feel it bodily.
I feel, okay, this is touching at something different for me. I'm, like, almost, maybe you can't see it because I'm far away and I have this nice little halo here and, like, it's just whatever, but... Like, I feel the stuff, like, I feel the nostalgia of my childhood and talking about this weird lake in particular so viscerally that my heart feels like whatever armor is around it is melting.
Uh-huh.
And I think, like, one of the benefits of having gotten into, like, intellectual shit is, like, that I do it wrong. And that all of my attempts to, like... Not even attempts. The way that I just talk in this kind of elevated thing right now, first of all, I know you can hang, so it's fun. Second of all, it's, like... to me, it's all words about feeling. And, like, I mean, maybe this is coming from, like, an affect-y place if I wanted to be like that, but it's really not. Like, talking about how fake the lake is breaks my heart in the same way that the lake itself breaks my heart. And, like, that lake being so weird, but nonetheless being a place of absolute peace for me, it sounds like I'm intellectualizing it. I'm not intellectualizing it, but the emotional power of the lake for me feels like the easiest to describe in these terms because that's, like, how it feels when I observe it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that happens to me all the time in therapy, actually, and beyond, where it's like, okay, so you have this, like, weird way of talking, like, where you're just, like, being all smart about shit, and it's just, like, that's true, but I just think that, like, there's a really sincere and, like, kind of eviscerating sadness to, like, specificity on a theoretical level.
Yeah.
That I feel kind of mirrors how abstractly I feel the world. And, like, how much that abstract feeling I have of the world affects me emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that really resonates with me. Like, you just speaking about the, like, it made me, like, when I think of things, like nostalgia specifically, right? There's a rush. There's a melancholy.
Yeah.
that is like overwhelming. And like I can, because of the way my brain works, I can genuinely place myself back in these contexts in such a way that like the emotion, that melancholy floods into my system, you know?
And it is a flood.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes become a lake.
Yeah. But that, like, you know, this kind of like, the way that like you and I, when I let myself like kind of talk about the world in this kind of like specificity. I mean, it when you were growing up, did you talk like this? Or did you find it alienating at all just to think about the world like this and know that other people weren't? Because, like, again, go back to like just what we're talking about at the beginning, like this. I wasn't surprised by the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. I'm like, yeah, I know this is how this stuff works. It bums me out. Like I'm not like completely removed from the world and not emotionally affected by it, but I'm like not surprised by the viciousness and violence of the dissolution of society. I'm just like, yeah, that's because I've read enough like theoretical shit to know that's what happens when you have all these contradictions that fucking butt up against each other. And we just happen to be living at a time when all of them happen to be hitting up against each other. So yeah, there was a question in there somewhere.
I think I can unearth it. I think you're trying to say like, well, the first thing that you had said in that sentence cluster, which I relate to, is like, did I always talk like this? Which is an incredibly hard answer for someone to give of the way they speak because it changes. Like, we're not at a bar. Like, we're not on a walk. Like,
right, but if we were at a bar, I would and we were talking like this, it would feel natural to me in a way that like me having to like talk about the Ninja Turtles to a friend who maybe like is into the Ninja Turtles or whatever. Like I feel like I have to kind of like shade off part of myself to have that kind of conversation or to talk about like, oh, it's, you know, unseasonably warm today. Like I don't give a shit about the weather. Like I truly don't, like as an observation.
Yeah, maybe I feel so like doltish or something. I feel like, because I feel like they're all the same conversation. Like I really do see this in like this weird kind of dreamy way where I'm like, yeah, the weather, it is unseasonably warm. Like, what does that feel like? Okay, that feels like this thing. And then like all of a sudden, and then it becomes like this way more macro exploration of like whatever. And there we are. Like, it's really strange. Because I feel like I would definitely talk this way. I feel like I have a consistent thing. But yeah, I mean, have I always talked this way? I think in general, like, maybe over the past, like, half of my life, I've been, like, way more into creativity as, like, and, like, curiosity specifically as, like, a way of being. And weirdly, that's taken me through theory, where I feel like a lot of the times when my friends who like theory and I talk, it's like the theory has made them less curious about something because they're, like, either totally sad because of what the theory is about, or because, like, the theory has become, like, completely self-perpetuating of its own, like, linguistic value or performative value. And for me, it's just, like, interesting because I feel like I'm operating... Like, I do kind of feel like I did maybe when I was younger, but instead of trying to perform this, like, weirdo that I've since become, I'm as curious as I was then, but just asking it in, like, a weird, like, way. Like, I'm asking it in a lab coat. Like, the same questions that I'm asking when I was 8. Okay. Which is, like, why is this lake so emotional to me? You know?
Uh-huh. Well, let me push on that a little further then. Did you feel alienated as a kid?
Fuck yeah, of course.
Okay, well, I mean, some people aren't, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people have the strength of character to be this weird and to just, like, be riding it out. But, like, I was alienated, and I also felt like, and I still feel like I'm doing everything wrong. And so, like, that's a different anxiety than a bourgeois anxiety, though it has parts of it. Like, I'd be alienated and then be like, okay, so the way I'm seeing the world has to be unique to me because I feel alienated and I'm the one experiencing it, which is, like, totally not how you should go about life because it's totally solipsistic and insane. Mm-hmm. But, like, when I started to understand that, like, everybody probably feels this alienated and it's just, like, oriented in the way that they're oriented, then it was, like, fine. But like I only really came to that realization like a year and a half ago, so you know.
So then, like, I mean, you know, you had friends growing up. Obviously, you said Rax King was a friend growing. I mean, like, were you? You know, I mean, I felt alienated, but I still had friends, and I still, like, you know, went to my temple, and still, you know, I fit in enough that like I wasn't completely ostracized. Was that your experience? Like, how did you like interact with people, and how did this like this? You know, if this is how you always have been, right? How did other people react to that, and how did you understand your place?
I feel like at the pearly gates or whatever. Like this is what I'll be asked. How did I know my place?
How did you understand your place, or how did it feel to you?
Oh, well, I mean, I was like bullied and stuff, and like nobody knew if I was gay. And like there's all this like weird 2000s era like you have boobs too early and too much, like kind of weirdnesses. And so I felt like the ways that I was being ostracized or whatever were like so beyond my control, and nonetheless, because of the way I see the world, I let them hurt me, which was really bad. But like I did have friends, and I've always been kind of a jokester, like secretly or not, and like hanging out with people who would let me joke was like something that I could do. And yeah, I think the thing is like I felt ostracized, and I also don't have whatever stuff that makes someone a true social climber. So, like, I would never fight it in exactly the right way. I would just, like, try to find, like, my buddy, you know, and, like, wiggle around towards, like, an understanding of where I am in the world. But I never really thought about, like, where I was. I just thought, like, I got to get really good at jazz guitar, inexplicably. Like, I thought that would help. And, every, like, alienation feeling got subsumed into my desire to, like, understand the instrument and, like, be creative and write music.
I mean, what's the connection between that? Like, did you have a feeling like I want to play guitar first, and then the alienation gets channeled in? Is it a reaction? Like, I'm trying to figure out the like micro dialectic here in your brain about like how it came about, because I think that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I just really liked it, which helps, and then it was a thing to do when I felt lonely and wasn't invited to parties. And also, it was always there and really beautiful. And I was good at it, so it was, like, kind of rewarding, even though probably I wasn't as good as I had to think I was in order to get where I'm at now, you know? So I think it was, I mean, like other dialectical things, it was never, like, one thing happened and the other. It was just kind of like, here we are. Here's this thing that makes inexplicably a ton of sense to me, which is the fretboard and making sound. And I'm, like, weirdly good at it without having to try that hard. But so what would happen if I tried hard? And then also I can write songs. Because I wrote, like, so many songs from when I was, like, 12 and just starting out till, like, when I was 15. And then, like, jazz, because, like many people who learned how to play jazz from other people, I thought that it wasn't about songs, which it's about songs a lot of the time. And so, like, I thought that I couldn't write songs and do it. And then that was weird because that was when I felt the most, like, abstract and like weird, because I was in high school and I was like, no one understands me. I'm in high school. I'm just like a person no one understands in high school. And then like I tried to get good because it was like a way for me to have gigs, and then having gigs meant like playing with people who weren't really my friends, or maybe they were, but I could pretend that they were my friends because we were at the gig together, which is like a totally fucked up psychological thing to have with gigs, which I don't really anymore. But when I was playing jazz, I like did. That's, like, how I understood friendship, as, like, a weird, like, colleague thing, because then they'd have to hang out with me because I was the best man for the job. So it was kind of linked with commerce, too, in a fucked up way.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's tough to, you know, if you grew up in America or anywhere, I guess, now. But, like, you know, it's I found it to be very difficult to peel those things apart.
Yeah. But I really didn't try to be good at guitar to be the best man for the gig to get money. Like, it was kind of about friendship and, like, community, which I didn't really experience in the jazz world in high school or really even college. It took until, like, playing noise for me to, like, feel like music was a communal act, which is weird.
I mean, when you said, like, the fretboard, I'm paraphrasing you, but I think you said something like it felt natural.
Yeah.
To you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you remember like, when you first picked up a guitar, like, what was the feeling? It
was like, I mean, this sounds like a put on, but it really felt like it just made sense. Like, not in a, like, I know what these notes are way, in a, like, my hand wants to do this. Like, my hand is meant to do this right now. And my mom, even though my parents fight about this, which is cute, like, I think my mom taught me the first couple chords. And my dad taught me more chords than that, but she taught me the first ones. And it was after I had, like, unceremoniously and with great guilt now fired my piano teacher. Because I was just, like, it was, like, mid-divorce, and I just was, like, acting out in, like, this one way. I feel so bad about that being a teacher now, because I'm like, oh, God. Could you imagine? But my mom taught me.
Look, I fired fired. I was, like, what, 8? But, like, I asked to stop taking piano lessons because it conflicted with Alf, which was on at the TV show.
Alf? Yeah.
Yeah, well, but hey, before it was Pogs on The Simpsons, it was a TV show on NBC in the late 80s, and it conflicted with my piano lessons. So I was like, nope, I'd rather watch Alf.
I get it. Passivity is nice. And also piano is kind of hard. I feel like with guitar, literally just the act of having to go like this rather than down. Mm-hmm. I think that was, I'm intellectualizing it now, but I feel like that's something that really comforted me. Is like the why of it rather than I know why of the hand.
Yeah. It does. I'm thinking like I do like the complexity of pianos more. Mm-hmm. But the feeling of a guitar does seem more intuitive to me, and I wonder if it's just the music I listen to.
I just couldn't explain it if I tried. It felt so right, and it's also portable. Mm-hmm. But what's cool is like sometimes I have these moments. Actually, it's usually like mid-song during a set that I'm playing for people, where I look at this like piece of wood, specifically this fretboard, because I still most of the shows I play the guitar that I played when I was like 13. Like, I've been just using the same one forever. And it's like so much of my like understanding of this world comes from my understanding of this like 2 to 3 feet of wood. And I feel completely free in this like Tron-like universe of like this like fretboard. Like, I just get it. Like, this is great. And then everything else, I feel like I have to just go through so many fucking lenses to like understand it. You know?
Can you say more about that? Because that's really interesting.
I mean, it's a horrifying thing to admit, but I just really get it. Like, the guitar, like the fretboard, it's like I know where all the notes are, which is not nothing. And I know how to make chords, and I know how they're going to sound, and I know that if I press with my right hand a little bit too hard, it will be a little sharp. Like, all these little things, like where the harmonics are, I feel a great deal of comfort and like a walking sensibility, like, oh, this is like a forest that I know every single tree in. And then when I'm like trying to understand the world, it's just so like broad scale incomprehensible to me, even though a lot of things I've learned to expect, like this Rittenhouse miseries and other just crazy injustices every minute, and like, or like even good things I don't understand. Like, why did I get this amazing commission? Like, I didn't, like, nothing seems like it makes sense. So even thinking like a couple of feet back about the, like, why did Nirvana get famous? Why did, like, Joanna Newsom get famous? Like, thinking about all of these things, like, how did they get there? It's so incomprehensible to me that the only way that I can find any peace is to go back to the fretboard and, like, be comfortable in that, because it's like, okay, this is my domain, and then I can tune into that, and my brain can deal with that later, you know?
I mean, look, this is, like, very, like, armchair psychology, Freudian bullshit, but, like, is there any connection? Like you said, you seem to like pick up guitar at the same time like your parents were getting divorced.
Is this therapy?
Well, it's just, I mean, like, that's why I called it like bullshit. But like, I mean, it like to some, you know, to a jabroni like me, just talking to you for like an hour, right? That it's like that detail did pop out at me, and it seems like
yeah, they're related.
Yeah.
There's other, like, way less savory things. But, yeah, it's like... I mean, I really just want everyone to have this kind of thing where, like, something that's totally nonsensical happens to them early on. That has really nothing to do with them. And then they have something reliable that's interesting and, like, productive in a non-gross sense and, like, just lovely that they can, like, turn into also.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I like about weird art. whatever you want to, whatever you want weird to signify, is that like it does bring these like contingencies into your life that normally wouldn't be there, and maybe inspires you to go off on a different trajectory than you would have. And that's the value I find in a lot of surreal or strange or abstract art that I think a lot of people are just like, fuck this.
Yeah. I mean, I like art that sounds really alone because it reminds me maybe of that like initial impulse to take it seriously. Like the demos for Walter Becker Hat Too Flat era 11 tracks of whack. That sounds so fucking alone. It's so beautiful. And those demos are like funny. Like I love a funny, alone, weird artist that's clearly doing it for their own joy. I feel like Steely Dan really gets alone. Like they just sound alone.
I don't think I could hum a single line from Steely Dan.
This is great because you have like the whole rest of your life, and it's they're just hugely rewarding. They've kind of changed my life like 70 times. I'm a boomer.
But I mean, another thing you said, I'm just kind of curious. Like, I was a weird kid, and I didn't know enough to like. I hid some of it, but I didn't know enough to like hide the bulk of it, and so I was just like, and I mean, there's other things I credit, like being Jewish in a Christian area. I say it almost every episode, but like, so I'm just gonna wave my hand and shuffle
like a dowager.
Past it.
So regal.
Yes, I'm gonna have a sham it, Pat.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna call it from now on. Have a shamming it.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of like you intimated, if I'm using that word correctly, like that you were more getting bullied, like either from like people making fun of like gender or sexuality. I don't want, whatever you're comfortable talking about. I don't want to push you, but like, was it that, or were they like keying on to like your existential weirdness?
Ouch. Just kidding. No,
look,
I think
this is coming from, I wouldn't say it if I wasn't the same person. So
I love that. It's just true. It's so funny. Yeah, it was definitely both. I mean, the thing is like when kids outside of DC are bullying you, it's because you're different. And sometimes that difference is because I wear like a key ring or something that looks as dykey as I'll be. And sometimes it's like because I'm just a freak who's like pretending to read the book too hard for me, like in the lunchroom or like. Sure. Because like there's like a while, I think freshman year of high school, I just eat all my lunches outside and like sit in a tree and like be that kid and like just, or then practice during lunch. Like I was just like weirdo on my weird grind all the time. And so like, of course they're going to be like, oh, they're weird. I'm going to like assert that I exist by telling them that they're weird in these ways that also are coded weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, which is to say weird kid solidarity. And also like, I mean, it's clear, at least we've read a lot of books since then. I don't know. What a shallow reward.
Well, just like, I mean, in my more cruel moments where I'm saying like they're reactionaries, right? They don't have like an existence of their own, or they don't have anything that like pulls them, that like they don't have like an inner life that's interesting or anything. There's nothing. They're not. I said in my most cruel moments. Yeah. I honestly don't know. The whole Cartesian stuck in my own brain cage as it is, but like I can, because I'm just trying to figure out like why someone bullies someone else, right? And a lot of times it is pure reaction, right? It's just being a reactionary and like not being able to understand the world in all its particularities and all its and not being able to understand the vicissitudes of existence.
Right.
And so they like, these people lash out. And I don't know. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them.
Yeah. I think I'm cursed with a lot of it. Like a lot. It's not to try to make myself seem like holier or some shit. It's just literally like, I think about this one girl who bullied me. I've had people who bullied me in like ways that were like more intense, but this one bully who I won't name because I'm a human being who won't name their bully. Like, I think about her and it's like, I really just, you know how you like look at certain people and you look at them in the eye and there's not that much behind it and you wonder like if it's because you don't speak their language, like literally or otherwise, and like how lonely that is, that like there's some kind of like imaginary chamber that they have locked away from the world where like all of their riches lie that like might be locked away from themselves. But then I think about that same person like lying down on the couch. This is so saccharine, I'm gonna puke everywhere. But like I think about them like lying on the couch and waking up because their cat touches them at 4 a.m. and then going back into their husband's room or something. And I'm like, do they feel that same hollowness of like the potential to have actually maybe died by accident in that sleep? Like probably they do. Like I feel like these feelings, like maybe we talk about them in a certain key, but like they seem so normal. And I think that like fixating on the complexities that these people may or may not have access to within themselves and certainly keep hidden from the rest of the world, like it makes it seem like I have to fit in less because they probably feel just as weird as I do. Or at least I tell myself that, even if they don't. But I'm not like that with like a fucking murderer. But it's like with people who like bullied me on a small level and who might be miserable or happy or smelly or whatever, just like any like any fact of their life being what it is, like because our lives touched each other, like they're imbued with a kind of weird magic of that I know them, and like that makes me feel like I have an empathy, and that's confusing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind. It's a kind way of seeing things. I'm fully more revanchist and willing to write off shitheads than
I mean, that's probably saved you a lot of time, because I don't know, I have like a super capacious thing for forgiveness, even though I hold a hell of a grudge too. It's a hard way to live when you're both.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, I get it. Like, it's the impulse is in me. I just, I don't know.
You're better at protecting yourself, probably.
Maybe. I'm not sure what it is. It could just be pure anger and just like letting myself.
At least you can. I feel like this year maybe I feel like I'm touching anger deeper. But it's weird. I feel angry more that like this bully could never access this thing that might not exist in her, which is actually like way pretentious on my part to be like, oh yeah, of course they're deep, you know.
I mean, when you were a kid or a teenager, did you let yourself fully feel your emotions, like outwardly? Did you like?
Oh yeah, I was a feelings kid for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I write songs. I feel like we're all just like.
I wrote songs. I mean, when I was in a band, I didn't I still was in a space where I wasn't really letting myself feel the emotions. I didn't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I feel like for a certain sap, me included, like it was just, I could not, like just big cry, like big cry, read Salinger, eat hot chip, lie. I don't know. Like it was just like an insane existence of like high emotion all the time. And I'm honestly still there. It's a miracle that I have people close to me who can tolerate it.
Well, I mean, like right now, you know, you give off the appearance of being kind of tamped down at least, right?
Life is crazy. Thank you.
So you would say this is atypical, perhaps?
No, this is super typical. I know I come off this way, but it's always a shock when someone reminds me. Because I really like, I feel like I walk around. My friend Liza always brings this to my attention, where I'm always just like a faint, like miserable, like little punum kind of thing. And like, just like so like, like I always feel like I'm on the verge of tears, like if I look at anything. And it's just like so, like how am I like this at 29, almost 30? Like, why do I feel like knocked over by a feather? Like, but then I get this feedback that I seem a little bit icy or removed or abstract. And I'm like, but I'm like literally hemorrhaging feeling. Like, don't you hear it? And then like, you know, I'll hear my music and I'll be like, yeah, that's so emotional. And someone else will hear it and be like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's right there. But for me, it's all emotion. It's just on a really weird register.
Yeah. No, I identify with that. And it's definitely been like, like look, the connection between like what you feel inside and how you present to the world, it doesn't have to like whatever you feel inside doesn't have to like be there on the surface.
Yeah, but I feel like it always is for me, and then it isn't really. And I'm like, whoa, that's weird.
Is it a control thing? Like when you were like, for me, no, because like for me, it was like I wanted to control the way that the world sees. I still do it. Like if I'm just like staring off in thought on the subway, and then I like catch myself and I realize that someone's in my eye line, I have to performatively act like I am in thought so that they know I wasn't staring at them. And I need to communicate that information. Yeah, definitely. Like a definitely like touch to my chin or just like a look off into the middle distance, upper right, 45-degree angle with my...
Upper right, deep. I'm a lefty.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a right thinker with my elbow, the elbow of my hand touching and like, very like Rodin-esque.
Oh, wow, like, literally the thinker.
Yeah. Literally, just to, like, communicate to that person that I'm not staring at them. I want them deeply to know that they just happen to be in my eye line as I was, like, in thought.
That's so funny. I did that in high school with this one person that I was like...
You're like, it's so funny you're in middle age and doing the thing I was doing in high school.
No. I noticed that predilection first then. I'm sorry. No, but I remember so distinctly looking at this one guy and being like, I'm looking at this guy, but I'm not really looking at this guy. I'm thinking about whatever. And then like realizing he was doing the same thing at me. He wasn't looking at me. We were both just staring kind of like neutrally at each other, but not looking at each other, which was maybe the least lonely I ever felt in high school. Is this like weird missed thing. I'm just saying that for the literary effect. I actually don't think it was the least lonely effect. But like, man, I love that. That was, and then you saying that, I'm probably the same way on the train, but like I think at this point on the train, because I'm so overwhelmed by just like the train, I don't look at anything. I'm just I make it so I can't look at people. It's really sad. It's very alienated. Mm-hmm. It's just like there's so many people and they're all wearing such amazing shoes. It's just pretty soon you can't look at all of them.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to like pick apart, really we should wrap up in a little bit, but like I'm trying to pick apart this kind of like the way that your emotions come out of you and then the way that like that leads into creating things. If that makes, that's so broad and vague, but like, does that make any sense to you as a prompt?
It makes sense, but I want a little bit more from you on that. Cause if you're talking about process, it's different.
Well,
I
mean, less process and more of the like, I want to say like, field. I really think of I don't say this to most people, but I think maybe you can get it. But like, I think of this stuff as like the same thing as like field theory in physics or something like that. Or like, I mean, really, I think about complexity theory a lot. And so I think about attractors and what is the like central, or what is the attractor that you are, and what is the region, I guess, that you are operating in, right? That's why I think of field theory. I think of regions. I think of things like that. Because I think that's a much better way of understanding why people do anything, their occupation, their art, whatever, right? It's trying to understand the boundary conditions of who they are and of the space that they operate in. All right. So, and that, I mean, that's when I go into any of these interviews, that's kind of what's in the back of my head. And then I try to,
ask that.
I try to make it understandable to most human beings.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've let you down or performed the wrong kind of intelligence because I don't fully know what you mean.
No,
like
you didn't. It's a very it's the way grad school changed the way I think about things, and so I can't not think like this. Yeah. And I also do have a very deep belief that this is the correct way to think about things, and that's
an amazing. I've felt that way about certain modalities in my life.
Basically, I'm just trying to say that like there's no like. It's not linear. Like you don't like your dad doesn't hand you a guitar when you're 12, right? I mean that's why I like kind of like said it was bullshit armchair psychology, right? That like it is an important thing that happened, right? Your parents are getting divorced when you're at the same time that you're picking up guitar, right? That's part of it, right? But it doesn't like, it's not like, well, that's it. We just solved it. Yeah, you're reacted to your parents' divorce, and now we know why you play guitar, and we can
yes.
clap the chalk dust off our hands and get on with our day, right? It's more like, well, that pushed you. You have a trajectory, right? Like if you think of your life as some kind of like pointed in some kind of direction, and before that, it was pointed in some direction, and that nudged you in a different direction, and then maybe like being bullied nudged you and like kept pushing you in that same direction, and eventually you are now like very good at guitar, very good at writing songs, and very you write very interesting songs, right? And then the music you listen to, like all this other kind of stuff, right? It just keeps pushing you. But like what's also important to understand is not just like your trajectory, is like the space that you're operating in, and like the kind of things like when I say what an attractor is, it's a thing that beckons you. Let's just like make it a very easy kind of metaphor. It's something that beckons you, right? Either it is, and it doesn't have to be one, right?
Yeah.
If we think about like a phase space, which is what you talk about in complexity theory, there may be different attractors, and the different attractors form these basins, and right, your life trajectory kind of gets pushed in one way or another towards an attractor, and maybe it's like, I don't know, I can't think of a good jazz guitarist.
I wish I could say the same.
All the jazz people I know are just like horn players or pianists. So like,
it's a condition of things.
Thelonious Monk. Let's just pretend that was like the person you want it to be. And so
he's still the person that I want to be.
Okay, well,
He's like really near and dear.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a complete. I just grasped for the first jazz pianist I knew. But like that pulls you. That it's visceral, right? To get out of the metaphorical space, it really is visceral. Like the people I wanted to be in comedy viscerally pulled me in that direction, and I had other concerns, like my parents' desires for what they wanted me to be. Right, that pulled me in a different direction, and until I could escape the gravity of their desires, I couldn't actually move into that this new phase space. Does that make any sense at all?
Makes a ton of sense. I mean, my metaphor for that is tanning the hide.
Okay.
But that's a little bit more limited. Because it's like what part, what direction, how much can you tan it before it totally disintegrates? Is that the long, slow climb to death? Who knows? But I relate to that. If you're asking for me to like figure out what space all that stuff is in, I guess like that's sort of the operative that I feel like I'm missing. Like what, like space.
And like the other thing is like your phase space that you operate in changes over time. That's what makes this like very difficult to kind of like communicate. And
I guess, could you try to define space one more time so I can answer your question?
I mean, it's like in this terms, it's like a metaphorical space. Like, for example, like when I talked about like different paradigms earlier, like it was okay to like want to write TV. I mean, it's okay now. Like no one, like it's a fine desire to have, but it feels a little more frivolous in 2021 than it did in 1995. Right.
Yeah.
And the phase space changed. And, my parent, like breaking away from my parents' desires for wanting a nice Jewish boy to grow up to be a lawyer or a doctor. Right. That was so strong when I was 16.
Yeah.
And it was less strong when I was 26.
Yeah. So where am I now with this kind of stuff? All these things?
I mean, let me just ask a very basic biographical question. Is your family Jewish? Like, did you grow up Jewish?
Yeah.
Because you used to put them.
Jewish.
So I just...
I'm Jewish. Eisenberg.
Well, could have been
I know.
German.
We got some rogue Germans in there tarnishing the lineage of the Eisenberg clan.
I mean,
God love them.
Did your parents have a desire for you to become a specific kind of person?
I think they gave up on that desire pretty soon after I became legible as who I am now, which is pretty early, as we've talked about. Like, I think they knew that I was just going to be like a music person or like a language person. Like I was really thinking about like classics and English and stuff. So they were kind of just like, oh, I guess I'll be a professor. But like, you know, they kind of like tailored the expectation. And also my dad and mom have been like hugely supportive because they're like really lovely people, but because I showed like significant early promise. Like it wasn't like I tried to play guitar and then it was like, I'm going to do this. And then it was like, I was really bad. Like I was instantly really good. Like, was I perfect? No. But it was like very feasible that this could be like a thing because it just made a kind of sense. So it was easier for them to accept, I believe. Not to sound like a huge like guy about it, but it's just, that was the nature of it. Like for me, but as for like where I am, like the space I am now, I think I'm just getting so like there's like an error message like in my brain. It's like space. Like I keep hearing that. I'm just like, I don't know, because I have like fame dysphoria where I don't know if anyone's heard my work ever, or I think everyone's heard it and knows who I am, and I never know which it is, so I assume that it's the former. And like, you know, as far as a creative space, like that's always oriented towards not existing because I'm so much in the material that like whatever concerns that I have can take it on the wayside, like I've explained a little earlier. And so, yeah, I feel so funny. I feel like I'm just like hitting this place of like not knowing like how I'm supposed to, you know, but I like where I am. I think it's funny because when I was setting up my computer, I was thinking like the thing we're going to talk about is like early childhood. So I'm going to talk about the fact that I can't remember almost anything from it except for my dreams. But now I'm in this like, position of only being able to conceive of the question you're asking about what space I'm living in that same dream space, which is the only thing that I can remember of being really little.
Wait, last question.
Sure. Yeah, I know we're like,
why are your dreams the only thing you remember from your childhood?
It's not the only thing I remember. Like, I have a really distinct memory of shoving, like, mini M&Ms up my nose and then being scared that they would be stuck there together and then, like, forever. And then, like, picking my nose later, like, a month later from there and then being like, oh, no, they're stuck forever, but it's just a booger. Like, that I remember. But, like, I remember, like, the trips of memory. And nothing really horrible happened to me until I was Nothing really horrible happened to me until I was way older. And I don't really want to talk about those things. But, like, when I was little, I think just Dream World felt cooler. And I think it must have been that I liked it more. Because it was beautiful and exotic and personal, but it felt like anyone would have access to it. So I kind of feel like I'm always just trying to go back there. Like, whatever space I live in is, like, oriented towards, like, this imaginary that feels kind of universal. Just in the sense that other people can imagine things, too.
That actually seems like a very nice place to end.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I wish I planned that.
Did you purposely, or you're like, this is a good closer.
Yeah, it sounds all meaningful, so we're just gonna like commit really hard.
Wendy, this was an absolute delight on every level.
Thanks. I had such a good time talking with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. I hope we get to talk more about books and life. This is a real highlight. I feel less lonely.
Yeah, this is great. Please stay in touch.
Yeah, you too. And thanks for listening to my music. It means the world to me.
Yeah, it's legitimately great. Like,
thank you.
It's not hyperbole. I've learned in living out here in Los Angeles to be no one else seems to care, but I seem to put a lot of personal belief in being genuine with compliments. So
I believe it when you say it.
So no, I'm not blowing smoke up your butt.
And even if you were, I would have taken it seriously.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh.